All right, welcome back everyone to our water fluoridation investigation. So I had a viewer email me and ask me if I would focus a little bit more on the science of water fluoridation as opposed to the evil doers that's putting the fluoride in our public drinking water. So I read an article this morning discussing fluoride and hypothyroidism. Now, we know from looking at old newspaper articles that scientists were recognizing that fluoride causes goiters, right? A big lump in your neck. Now, why is that? Well, fluoride slows down your thyroid. And in fact, years ago, doctors used to prescribe fluoride for those that had an overactive thyroid. So you can have hyperthyroidism, where your thyroid is a little too fast and you need to slow it down. And then you can have hypothyroidism. So if you're somebody who has a slow thyroid, then you want to be really careful about ingesting water that has fluoride in it, because it could worsen that thyroid problem, right? And slow it down even more. You'll become more tired, more moody, and it'll disrupt things like your hormones. So, per the request of this viewer, let's jump into some recent science. Now, like I said, we've known for years that fluoride slows down your thyroid, right? That it affects your thyroid. But there was, more interest in this. And so folks in England decided that they wanted to do a comparative study looking at a area that adds fluoride to the drinking water, an area that does not, and compare the rate of hypothyroidism. Now, ideally, the type of study that you would want to do is a long-term double-blind inert placebo study. Well, that never happened, right? So what are we left with? We are left with looking at two different populations and seeing what the outcomes are. I also want to say, well, what else was I wanting to say? Yes, the other thing I wanted to say is that the biological mechanism, right? So fluoride is a halogen, and essentially your thyroid needs iodine. And when you have fluoride and when you have iodine, they can compete with one another. And if the fluoride wins out too much, what will happen is it will cause you to have an underactive thyroid and disrupt that. So let's jump straight into the study, shall we? Let's go. The study, the title is, Are Fluoride Levels in Drinking Water Associated with Hypothyroidism Prevalence in England? A large observational study of GP practice data and fluoride levels in drinking water. Let's get into the abstract. So right here, it says, while previous research has suggested that there is an association between fluoride ingestion and the incidence of hypothyroidism, few population level studies have been undertaken. In England, approximately 10% of the population live in areas where community water fluoridation schemes and hypothyroidism prevalence can be assessed from general practice data. This observational study examines the association between levels of fluoride in water supplies with practice level hypothyroidism prevalence. So in Europe, most of Europe does not add fluoride to their drinking water. So they say in England, approximately 10% of the population live in areas with community water fluoridation schemes. I love how they say schemes. So most of the world does not actually add fluoride to the drinking water. So this is perfect to look at England, where You have a population, or rather, you could say a sample of people who are drinking the fluoridated water versus not drinking the fluoridated water. Next. Okay, let's look at the methods. We used a cross-sectional study design using secondary data to develop binary logistic regression models of predictive factors for hypothyroidism prevalence at practice level using 2012 data on fluoride levels in drinking water. 2012, 2013 quality and outcome framework diagnosed hypothyroidism prevalence. 2013 general practitioner registered patient numbers, and 2012 practice level index of multiple deprivation scores. So England, they do a great job of tracking what's going on over there, from my understanding. Next, the findings. We found that higher levels of fluoride in drinking water provide a useful contribution for predicting prevalence of hypothyroidism. We found that practices located in the West Midlands, a wholly fluoridated area, are nearly twice as likely to report high hypothyroidism prevalence in comparison to Greater Manchester, which is non-fluoridated. So this is perfect. They compared West Midlands, where they do add fluoride, to Manchester, that does not add fluoride to the drinking water. Interpretation. In many areas of the world, hypothyroidism is a major health concern and in addition to other factors such as iodine deficiency. We know this is a problem. So if you're drinking a lot of water that has fluoride in it, you're going to want to consume more iodine. If you're deficient in iodine, then the fluoridated water that you're drinking will just wreck you. Fluoride exposure should be considered as a contributing factor. So again, it says, this is the interpretation, in many areas of the world, hypothyroidism is a major health concern, and in addition to other factors, such as iodine deficiency, fluoride exposure should be considered as a contributing factor. The findings of the study raise particular concerns about the validity of community fluoridation as a safe public health measure. Background. Community water fluoridation has been an accepted public dental health intervention since its introduction in the United States of America in the 1950s. In England, some 10% of the population receives fluoridated water at a targeted level of 1 parts per million, otherwise known as 1 milligram per liter. A recent Public Health England report evaluated a range of secondary health data, concluding that water fluoridation is a safe public health measure. However, data on hypothyroidism were not analyzed in this report, despite previous studies which have suggested that there may be a link between fluoride consumption and hypothyroidism. Hypothyroidism and undetected subclinical hypothyroidism are associated with a number of health problems, while thyroid dysfunction is a common endocrine disruptor. So there was a study done it says Public Health England report evaluated a range of secondary health data, concluding that water fluoridation is a safe public health measure. Well, but they didn't look to see if the fluoride damages your thyroid, something we've known since the 1800s. What? Okay. Let's jump back where we were. While thyroid function is a common endocrine disorder, there are a few population studies that examine the association of this disease with fluoride intake. Now, this is key, few population studies. There's been a lot of studies done, which is how doctors came to the conclusion that if you have somebody with an overactive thyroid, you need to give them fluoride to slow it down. So there were studies that was done. They're just talking about a few population studies, okay? Next, in the UK, management of hypothyroidism is undertaken by primary care physicians, general practitioners, and patients' thyroid function levels of thyroid stimulating hormone and thyroxine is tested annually as one element of the GP pay for performance system, the quality and outcome framework. Moving on. Okay. The data provide a measure of practice prevalence of hypothyroidism, which can be geographically mapped against areas with and without fluoride added to the drinking water. The paper examines whether fluoride levels provide a useful contribution to a predictive model of practice level hypothyroidism and whether there is any difference in hypothyroidism prevalence between practices serving areas where water is fluoridated in comparison to areas not fluoridated. Meaning, by doing these studies, you can predict if you put fluoride in the drinking water, you're going to cause hypothyroidism. Okay, approximately 6 million people, 10% in England, live in areas where drinking water contains natural fluoride or which has been artificially fluoridated at a target concentration of 1 part per million. Using prevalence, so we're right here, using prevalence data from the UK, QOF, an analysis was undertaken to determine whether prevalence was affected by practice populations being situated in fluoridated areas at greater than 0.7 milligrams per liter and areas with lower levels of fluoride. So they're looking at if it's greater than 0.7 milligrams per liter or above 0.7 milligrams per liter. 0.7 milligrams per liter is the so-called optimal level in the United States. Although it's all over the place. Nobody can drug you at precisely 0.7 parts per million or milligrams per liter. While there are other sources of fluoride in people's diet, e.g. tea, drinking water is the most significant source of ingested fluoride in the UK. Okay, here we go. The effects of fluoride on the thyroid have long been observed. Exactly right. The effects of fluoride on the thyroid have long been observed. And if you've been following this channel, you know it goes all the way back to the 1800s. In the 1950s, fluoride was used pharmacologically to reduce the activity of the thyroid in people with hyperthyroidism. exactly. This is well known, guys. Doctors selected fluoride as a thyroid suppressant based on study findings linking fluoride to goiter, right? Remember that article where the scientists did a crummy study and said that fluoride caused a goiter in the dog, which then prompted them to do more research and more studies that later confirmed it. Okay, so doctors selected fluoride as a thyroid suppressant based on study findings linking fluoride to goiter. And as predicted, fluoride therapy did reduce thyroid activity in the treated patients. Okay, down here, guys. Typically, a dose of between 2 and 5 milligrams per day was found to be effective, and this is within the range commonly consumed by individuals living in fluoridated areas. Meaning, let's say you live in an area where there's no fluoride in the water and you have an overactive thyroid, then you can take between 2 and 5 milligrams of fluoride and it will slow down your thyroid. Well, if you live in an area with fluoridated water, you don't need to do that because you're getting drugged at the exact same amount within reason. It really depends on how much water and tea and food and psychiatric drugs you're taking, but you can in fact be consuming the same amount of fluoride in your public drinking water that was used to drug people with an overactive thyroid, which is why what the county of Henrico and the city of Richmond is doing is so utterly reckless. It's reckless disregard. Okay, down here. 2 reviews have examined the impact of fluoride on thyroid function, including that fluoride is an endocrine disruptor with the potential to disrupt the function of tissues that require iodine. In particular, it was suggested the chief endocrine effect is decreased thyroid function at fluoride exposure levels as low as 0.01 milligrams per kilogram per day. Wow. So 0.1 milligrams, this is per kilograms of body weight per day, where iodine intake is inadequate. So if you don't have enough iodine, like, your health is going to be wrecked. If you're drinking fluoridated water and you're not getting enough iodine, you're going to feel tired all the time. The evidence relating to the relationship between fluoride intake and thyroid deficiency is mixed, as studies either used observed goiter as the measurement of impact or limited thyroid function measurements, or failed to take into account other factors, particularly inadequate iodine intake. Okay, guys, I just realized that if I read this whole thing to you, it would take me probably 2 hours. I've been reading long enough that I'm leaving handprints in my face. So I think what I'm going to do is skip ahead to a couple portions in the middle and then to the end. But I hope you go back and read the study yourself. It's really interesting. And simply put, they're looking at areas at one particular area that puts fluoride in the drinking water versus one particular area that does not, and they're seeing what is the rate of hypothyroidism. So let's continue, okay? To minimize the risk of increase in the prevalence of hypothyroidism, it is important, therefore, to limit fluoride ingestion from all sources. This would be particularly important in areas where iodine concentrations are low, given the potential action of fluoride as an iodine inhibitor. That's right, fluoride is an iodine inhibitor. according to the scientists, potentially. They have to use words like potentially. We know that fluoride is an iodine inhibitor. From a public health perspective, this raises questions about the safety of community fluoridation, and consideration should be given to reducing all sources of fluoride in the environment, right? Because fluoride is a drug and we shouldn't put it in our public drinking water. What is already known on this subject? Okay. Community water fluoridation is an established public dental health intervention in some countries. Most of the world does not add fluoride to the drinking water. There have been a number of studies that suggest that the ingestion of fluoride is associated with hypothyroidism. We've known this since the 1800s. There have been no population studies that have examined this. A recent analysis of health data on the impact of fluoridation in England did not examine hypothyroidism prevalence despite the availability of data within the National Quality and Outcome Framework dataset. This is what we call corruption, people. They had the data. They were supposed to look at whether or not there was an issue, and they chose not to. What this study adds, this study is the first population level study of the association between fluoride levels in water and hypothyroidism. So I want you to understand, this is not the first study. This is just the first population level study of the association between fluoride levels in water and hypothyroidism. And we know what the biological mechanism of the fluoride is on the thyroid. We found a positive association between fluoride levels and hypothyroidism. Hypothyroidism prevalence was found to be at least 30% more likely in practices located in areas with fluoride levels in excess of 0.3 milligrams per liter. In America, they claim that you get a precise level of 0.7 milligrams per liter, but that is not the truth. They regularly go over, and in the case of Richmond recently, there was a fluoride accident where over a month's worth of fluoride went into the drinking water in a little over 5 hours, and those numbers were astronomical. This population study supports earlier hypothesis that fluoride is associated with hypothyroidism. In the UK, water is fluoridated at 1 parts per million, otherwise known as 1 milligram per liter. And in areas where water is fluoridated, the model predicts that after controlling for other factors, practiced populations are significantly more likely to have higher levels of hypothyroidism than those in non-fluoridated areas. Consideration needs to be given to reducing fluoride exposure, and public dental health interventions should stop interventions reliant on ingested fluoride and switch to topical fluoride-based and non-fluoridated based interventions, meaning stop putting it in the drinking water and instead give people the option to brush their teeth with fluoride. And if people want to run out and buy fluoride tablets and drops, then let them go do that. Okay, I don't know about you guys, but I'm a little somnolent after reading that. Was it reading the paper or was it the fluoride in the drinking water? I don't know. Guys, here's the bottom line. Let's pretend like fluoride is the greatest thing in all of the land. We know it's a drug. We know that it causes adverse health events. So, should we force drugs on the public? America signed what's called the Nuremberg Code, We said we are not going to force or coerce people into medical experiments or drugs. We know it's inappropriate to put vitamin C in the water. We know it's inappropriate to put iodine in the water. We know it's inappropriate to put calcium in the water or a blood pressure medicine in the water or a cholesterol in the water. So why on God's green acres do you think that it's okay to put hydrofluorosilicic acid in the drinking water? Fluoride. There is no such thing as a hydrofluorosilicic acid deficiency. Fluoride, even naturally occurring fluoride, is not an essential element, okay? So we need to have the decision as to what we consume. Everybody's needs are different. Everybody's iodine needs are different. Everybody's calcium needs are different. Everybody's protein needs are different. But for some reason, when it comes to fluoride, you're trying to do this barbaric medicine of mass medicating everyone, right? Everybody's drug needs are different. Some people need drugs. Some people don't need drugs. If you want drugs, then go out to the store and go buy you some fluoride tablets and some fluoride drops and put it in your own drinking water. Do not put it in other people's drinking water. In the state of Virginia, it's a crime to put poisons and drugs in the drinking water. Okay? This is a crime. Read the Code of Virginia. So, anyway, that's all I have to say on that one. I said I was going to do a video on the science, and of course I end it with a rant. Surprise, surprise. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed. Let me know if you enjoyed this video. Let me know what kind of content you would like in the future, and I will see you next time. Thanks for joining me on our water fluoridation investigation. See you next time. Bye.